Everybody hit the like button wherever it is. Greetings, salutations. Give everyone a few minutes to jump in. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give everybody another minute or two to jump in. One thing I should do here is look and see when the last time I did one of these was, so I know what to talk about that we haven't covered yet. So the last one was a spring game. Okay, so it's been a few weeks. So I'm going to get started, start chatting about some stuff here. Basically, over the last few weeks, we've had our rivals camps. We had one in Atlanta. It's up in Ohio, which was a little bit of a bust because it was like 30-something degrees and started snowing during the camp. But, we were able to get a little bit of content out of that one. So we've been a little bit busy. Haven't been able to jump on here as much. And then obviously dealing with stuff at home with my wife and young children, everyone getting sick and those kind of fun things. So it's been a few kind of interesting weeks. And then obviously the big story has been kind of what's going on with Damon Stoudamire putting his staff together and trying to figure out kind of what the program's going to look like, getting new players. I would say we can start sort of with the basketball piece of this because I think that makes the most sense. Obviously, today getting the commit from Jalen Forrest, the son of James Forrest, the former legend of Georgia Tech. James has been kind of tight with Damon Stoudemire since Damon got the job. So that was something I kind of anticipated happening if there was room, and it worked out. And I think it makes a lot of sense to bring him in as a guy who can handle the ball, play both guard positions, gives you some depth behind Kyle Sturdivant and Miles Kelly, assuming he's coming back, and Amari Abram and Debo Coleman. So they have a really nice group of guards now. Kawasi Reeves can play the 2 and the 3. You're starting to sort of see, I guess, the picture of what Damon Stoudemire is trying to put together. And I like it. It's what I thought it would be, which is an athletic team that can shoot. It's an NBA style team. You'll be able to shoot the 3 and have really athletic guys at most of your positions, and then have a true traditional center here in Ebenezer, and some different guys, Tyshawn Claude, who can play the 4 and the 5 depending on how you line up, and then Tafara, the kid from UMass, who can play basically 3 through 5 technically, and Jalen Moore back as well. So I feel like they have a pretty nice little roster. Assuming Miles back, I think that puts them at 11, leaves 2 spots. Going to hopefully, I think, try to sign some younger guys for them, as it's a situation where they're a little bit top heavy right now in terms of the scholarship breakdown. I'll pull that up actually too while we're talking about it. Like right now, they have 3 guys who are going to be traditional seniors next year: Claude, Kyle Sturdivant, Lance Terry, who I left out earlier, as well as a really talented, combo guard. And then you have a bunch of juniors, Debo, Ebenezer, Miles, Jalen Moore, and Reeves, the newcomers, Reeves and Ebenezer. And then just 3 underclassmen. So you kind of need to start to figure out how to backfill. Obviously, they're making a push for guys, a lot of big name guys. Peyton Marshall's one. Russell had a story on him today. It's up on the site if you want to go check that out. Claude, I do not believe has 2 years. I think he would have to apply for the medical redshirt year or something. Because his clock started on. I never assume that someone's going to get the medical unless it's been done. And Tyshawn Claude's career started in 2019-20, so that's one season. Oh, I'm sorry. One season, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so he would be a senior. Because he played in 30 games as a freshman, didn't play his COVID season, played 9 games as a true COVID sophomore, and then to be honest, I don't know how that works. He may have 2 years actually, but I think it's a little funky because of where he was playing and in the league he was in. So I actually need to probably do some research on that. But yeah, I think that it'd be interesting to see what happens with these last couple spots they're playing with. What they do. I think they're pretty well set now at guard. So I like the pieces. I've been I've always been slow to adapt to the basketball coaches because Damon's the first one. I wasn't like of the 3 coaches that have been hired since I've taken over covering Georgia Tech that I wasn't like, oh, this is terrible. When I looked at it on paper, I didn't like Josh Pastner when he was hired and thought it was very similar to Brian Gregory. We were hiring a guy that was basically being chased out of town his old job. Brian Gregory was certainly that, and his terrible style of play was, difficult to watch for years. So, I think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'd be surprised if they took Jalen Young, the kid from Central Florida. I don't know what you would do I don't know where his minutes would come from because right now you're so loaded up at guard. Unless Miles Kelly were to stay in the draft, I don't think it makes any sense to add another guard that's an older guy. You already have Kyle Stoudemire, who's going to be 20 to 30 minute guy. You have Amari, who's a combo guard that's going to be at least in that range too. You have Lance Terry, who can play a combo guard spot. You have Jalen Forrest, who you just added. Where the minutes come from to play that, even if you're going 3 guards, I don't know that there's enough minutes to make that appealing. If I was that kid, I would probably be a little gun shy, especially considering he wasn't starting at UCF, which was not a good team last year. Blue Kane I think he's supposed to announce today. It's not going to be Georgia Tech. That was the rumblings I heard. So I think the Blue Kane ship sailed a while ago. The relationships there were with Josh Pastner and Julian Schwartz, and that's why he committed to Georgia Tech. He straight up told me that. So but I think, adding Amari from Ole Miss is sort of a trade there. They're a different style of player, but you certainly are getting back a very talented combo guard. So I think that I think they're in a good spot. I do think they need another true center if they can find one. I don't know there'd be a starter. I don't think you necessarily need a starting center. That's like a guy that I think you can do it with Claude and Ebenezer and match up based on. I mean, they're not going to play a ton of teams they play Duke and Carolina that have true centers and maybe 1 or 2 other teams, and then not a lot of teams size up that well. Florida State often does, but you can play with a smaller big man if he can get rebounds. That was sort of the rub the last few years was they didn't have a dynamic rebounder in the post except for when Javon Franklin turned it on at the end. And when you don't have that, it's harder to play small. Ndongo high school kid from Putnam Science Academy. He definitely would be one of the guys who would make sense to add because he's a guy that you can either play or redshirt or whatever. He fits into that rotation probably in some way, shape, or form. He gives you a bigger body who can defend. He's like 6'9", 220, kind of a big bodied guy that's going to add weight in college. And so I think he makes a lot of sense as sort of a long-term play. I still think they feel pretty good about that one. So that would, if they add him, you get Miles back. That leaves you with one spot to play with, basically. So I think that's a good position to be in if you're Georgia Tech, considering where they were, a month ago or 3 weeks ago. They've done a nice job kind of filling out the roster. I think there was definitely probably a learning curve for Damon Stoudamire. He was, trying to get staff hired and aimed really high with some of the people he was pursuing. Got, one guy that's considered a pretty heavy hitter and Carl Hobbs, and then some younger guys that are up and coming coaches to round out a staff now. Kept some guys around who I think are quality people. So I like what's been done here. It's just going to be, can he coach, can he develop, and then can he make enough of a wave to start to put guys in the NBA and get the perception of Georgia Tech back to maybe where it was towards sort of the tail end of the Hewitt era, where you were consistently seeing guys are playing in the NBA and getting drafted high, and Georgia Tech was in the mix for some heavy hitters. Will they be like signing the top 5 guys in the country again on a regular basis? I think there's a lot of work that would have to be done with NIL to get there. But I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if Damon wins and say they change shoe deals or apparel deals to Nike, that maybe changes math. Like all of these things there's so, especially with basketball, there's so many things intertwined in how things work and even who your deals with. I mean, they lost Robert Carter over basically an apparel deal, kind of a fallout from that. So when you go back historically in basketball, it's so much more tied to stuff like that than football. So it'll be interesting to see what Damon's able to do. I've been encouraged, though. I mean, he certainly seems to be working hard, and that's all you can ask for at this point is just some hustle and then see how he coaches them up. Let's see. Any questions? Yeah, you could get 2 grad transfer players. Someone asked if you could get 2 grad transfers to round it out. You could. I mean, if you wanted to just bring in the God, who was the guy they brought in a few years? EJ Price or something like that just was not very good. He was from maybe Eastern Michigan or somewhere like that. He came in and was literally just a practice player because, again, at Georgia Tech, you're not going to have the same probably walk-ons that you would have at other liberal arts colleges to work with. So it's a little more of a hustle to get them. But, that's the big thing I think with Georgia Tech is just having enough guys to have quality practices, having competition, right? And that was the killer for the last year and a half or whatever, is they didn't have enough competition. Jodan Price, that's right, and Kellen McCormick. Those are the 2 guys I couldn't think of. They were not ACC level guys. But they were practice players. That was what I was told when they signed them. That was the plan, and that's what they were. So that's the beauty of college basketball. Sometimes you end up with that stuff like that. Looking around basically at other kind of goings on, you still see the portal kind of in full effect. Actually, compared to some other schools, Georgia Tech's a little bit ahead of the curve now in filling out their roster, which is sort of amazing. Someone asked me, is there a lot of work to do with the chemistry to meld the new players and the old players? That may take half a season to do that. Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a little bit of a learning curve. They're running a new system too. So the Princeton offense should be in the garbage can in the back of McCamish these days, sitting there. And they're going to play an NBA style basketball, kind of wide open, 4 out, 1 in system. And they're going to have to all learn that. And I think that puts it in an interesting spot because I think it's kind of really opens things up right now because everyone's going to be sort of on even playing field. And I'm really curious to see what guys like Debo Coleman or Miles Kelly look like in that. That's what I feel like they should have been playing in the last 2 years. As most know, I was not an advocate for staying in the Princeton. I thought it was a mistake, and in part probably cost Josh his job in some ways, and not playing to the strengths of his roster and trying to force something that didn't make sense. So I'll be interested to see what's going on. Someone asked me if I'm bearish or bullish on Stoudemire. I'm in between. I want to see what he does. Like I think I've been impressed with the guys he's brought in the program. Um, I'm trying. I try to keep an even keel on these things and not get too excited. If they went and hired Rick Pitino and taking aside all of the non Pitino stuff, that would be exciting because he's a known quantity, right? Like I'm confident at 85, 90% that he's going to win at St. John's, right? Like if you brought someone in like that level where it's like a home run, I think then you get excited as someone that covers the program. With Damon, it's, I was impressed. So I've known about Damon for a long time from other people. And so, I'm trying to just let it play out, and that's the thing I struggle with, even with Brian Gregory and Josh. Was kind of actually prejudiced a little bit against them when they got the job because I thought it was a stupid hire in both cases, and this time around, I'm trying to be more open minded about it. I guess would be the way that I'm looking at it. I'm not trying to read it one way or the other. But yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle ground. It's not a bull market yet. If that's what you're asking. What else do they do? It's it just depends on spots and who's available, and it's tricky right now because there's just not a lot of high school kids. There have been quite a few that have reopened, but most of them are kids that were committed to pretty high level schools or maybe seeking NIL money or something. So I don't know how much. I haven't been able to gauge where Damon's at in terms of playing those games. Obviously, everyone has a different philosophy in college basketball with how they want to handle their NIL money and what they want done. So Damon is referred to it as being like a salary cap, which is what it is, right? And they're going to be more of a mid-major level salary cap in terms of what we call baseball, like looking at the baseball analogy with your payroll, right? Versus being the New York Yankees or the Mets. That's the Kansas and the Dukes and the Carolinas so Georgia Tech's got to find the middle ground. And if Damon's successful, I think they'll be able to push up more on that. But they're not going to be the Red Sox or the Yankees and the Mets in terms of spending money. And that's unless something really dramatically changes in terms of the level of interest. Which basketball player do I think will make the biggest impact? To be honest with you, I think it might actually be Tyshawn Claude because he's like been this weirdly productive guy wherever he's been, at least in the short term for this upcoming season. Like he's been a 15-8, 16-7, 17-9, 10-10 guy. Like he's oddly consistent. Like one of the things I look through when I start looking at these transfers is I'm looking for like how they play. Like that was one of the things that was interesting with Jalen Forrest is he was very actually consistent for a guy that wasn't starting and his minutes kind of went up and down. Wasn't shooting the ball great, but he was still able to score the basketball. With Claude, I think he's going to be a guy that comes in this next year and can immediately give you solid minutes. Maybe he's not going to be like the same as Javon Franklin per se at the end of the year, but when you average out his stats over a season, it might be closer to that. Like he might be a 10-7 guy. And I think that'll be really impactful. You just don't know with, like Amari Abram, like how far he has to go to get to where can he click into the thing that when he was playing a lot and scoring the ball really well, he's the guy with a ton of potential. He's like a more developed Davon Smith, like a guy with a better all around game with good athleticism. So do you see that kind of take over? Do you see Kawasi Reeves, who's a guy who has a ton of talent that just struggle to score the ball consistently and shoot the ball well. Can he find his shot? And if he does, he's really dangerous. So there's several guys. I don't know which one's going to come out because the thing is we're still kind of all figuring out the system and kind of where things are going there too. But yeah, I think that it's going to be more of a to be honest, I would not be shocked if Damon also plays more like the NBA style, where if like a guy's having an off night, you sit him and you play someone else. And really, other than like the kind of key superstar guys, you'll see that in the NBA. You'll see guys that go with hot hands and try different guys out in games and see who works, and that can be really effective as well. So you don't have there's no Jason Tatum, he doesn't have Jaylen Brown, he's got a bunch of pieces, and so he's got to figure out how to fit it together and have a competitive product with the understanding too. And this is the thing people got to understand: this is still very much kind of a rebuild. It's not like a square one rebuild, but it's a rebuild. You really think Jaylen Brown's going to come to the Hawks, Russell? He has done everything in his life to avoid playing in Atlanta after high school. Ebenezer, I think there you're looking for shot blocks and rebounds and putbacks and catching lobs and things like that. The Tafar, the kid from UMass, he's sort of another wild card guy. Like you don't know what you're going to get there. He's got to be more effective at scoring the basketball with his shooting percentages. That was the thing that was kind of killing him at UMass. So those guys, I feel like they're a little more developmental. Ebenezer is an interesting guy to me though, because you can't teach size, and it's been a while since they've had that. And that's the way, the way NBA bigs play a lot of places now is they block shots, rebound the ball, dunk it, or lay the ball in, shoot some free throws. And there's not, that's what the Warriors won with literally some of the like crappiest big men in the NBA. They were just guys that block shots and rebound. I mean, God, what is that guy's name that I'm thinking of right now? Not Draymond Green. Draymond Green's a solid all-around player, but the center that was on their teams, who stunk everywhere else he played. God, what was his name? Not talking about Spates either, but oh God, and then he went to the Cavaliers. This is going to bug the crap out of me now. I'm going to have to look it up while we're on here because I'll not be able to move on from thinking about this until I can remember who I'm talking about. All right, Golden State Warriors. Spates is coaching now, yeah. Well, yeah, he was a high school coach actually in Florida last year. No, I'm not talking about James Wiseman. That was more recently. I'm going back a few years. JaVale McGee, that's the guy I'm thinking of, who was like sort of this mediocre NBA big man that managed to like turn into like a key cog for the Golden State Warriors for their back-to-back championships, and then also was like a big part of the Lakers too. And he was like a 6 rebound, 6 points and 3 rebounds a game and a block a game or something at Golden State. Like with the Lakers, I think he was like 7 points and 6 rebounds and a block and a half. Like you don't have to get huge production. The way these systems are driven is it's all about your guards and your forwards and them scoring a ball, and the big man kind of cleans up things and sets picks. You do pick and roll and all that stuff. And so that's one thing I'm really curious with Claude too. Like, how is his pick and roll game? Like, because that's going to be a big part of things, I think, too, with the way they play. I'm curious how we haven't really seen Kyle run a lot of pick and roll. So, how does he look running that? Where would the line be for a successful season and a disappointing season given Damon Stoudemire's transition roster turnover? I think if they won like 5 games, everyone would be disappointed, right? Like, you can't be that much worse than you were. Would you like to see something similar? Like not finishing last in the ACC, like finishing at least where they did this past year. Things like that, I think, would be enough. Like a successful season would be sort of like what Josh did his first year. Josh inherited a much worse situation because it was pre-portal and they had lost all those guys off of that previous team that BG had should have gotten into the tournament if he had not coached them poorly and choked a couple games away the last year. So like that team returned like 15 points a game or something. It was like Quentin Stevens and Todrick and Ben Lammers who didn't play at all. And that was it. And then they brought in a bunch of dudes and we're lucky and able to keep Josh Okogie committed. And then that built that team and they ended up whatever they were, 16, 17 or whatever it was. Like you get somewhere like that near 500. I think that's a pretty good season. I think people need to be like realistic. That's going to take some time to build this. You're looking to build into the future, and the way the roster is constructed is building up to that. And you hope that in the 24 class and the 25 class, you start to hit in recruiting a little bit. And really, he just needs to hit in the top end of where Josh was, which was 45 rivals, 45 player to 100 players, loading up on those guys. Where Josh got killed was he would take the David Didinkos or Santi Prices or just some guys who weren't very good, or guys that were too slow to play in a system like Saba Gigabiria, or just missing all his big man and stuff. Like just avoiding those things will be huge for Damon. If he can keep his roster management in a better spot, that will make a huge difference. And those were the things that did Josh in. So obviously I think he's keenly aware of that. He has people around the program that he kept on staff who are aware of kind of where things went sideways, and hopefully they'll give him some good guidance on making sure he avoids those pitfalls. And I think Jay Batt's an engaged boss, which is something that Josh didn't really have after Babinski left. And I think that makes a huge difference too. So to me, I think that when you look at what they're doing and the roster he's building, I can sort of see the points. It's about building the pieces and what you want. It's just going to take time. Like none of this like goes immediately unless you were just walking in. And even if you went out, like look at what Kentucky's done. Like they've struggled signing blue chip kids and then adding the best kids from the portal, just trying to figure out how to play together and stuff. So there's some learning curve involved in it and some luck, and the schedule is going to be hard, and those things all really factor into this. So I think that's sort of my last thoughts on this. We're going to shift gears now and talk about a little football. Obviously, it was a weird kind of last couple of weeks. You've had some guys go into the portal, some guys go in the portal unexpectedly. Looking at you, Akilo Stone. I like Akilo a lot. I was kind of bummed out that he went in the portal because it seemed like he's finally getting it together. He had some really difficult life stuff. For those that don't know, that went on with his family, kind of around the COVID stuff, and he was literally like kind of getting it together, and something happened. And he went in the portal, not from Georgia Tech's wishes. So it'll be interesting to see. It would be funny, Russell said, to keep an eye on Ole Miss. It'd be very funny if he ends up at Ole Miss, and that's like where these kids are all going, because that definitely seems sketchy as hell. But looking around, like, I think they have a pretty solid possible replacement for Akilo in terms of a body, if they can get Eddie Kelly done. And, Russell's assumption, my assumption is that they will end up with Eddie Kelly. I covered his high school recruitment as well. Great kid. Played, field end, kind of strong side end or whatever you want to call it, some 3-4 end at USF. Played a lot as a true freshman last year. Can play inside or outside. He's built, he's got the size of a Keon White type defensive end. Was not productive, but again, he was being thrown to the wolves there on a really bad defensive line. And his best football is ahead. He was a guy that kind of was a steal for USF to sign out of high school. So if Georgia Tech gets him, I think that's a really significant addition for them, and sort of replaces the body of Greg Carroll at end or Akilo Stone. So that's a guy I'd watch there. Obviously, the wide receiver position and the corner position are the two ones we're watching the most. We get asked about a certain transfer wide receiver. He's not doing anything until he's done with school, but still think Georgia Tech's in a decent position there. In terms of other guys, they've offered other guys. It's about getting guys to visit and getting them bought in and trying to close. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the final pieces are. They're like publicly 85 scholarships, but the real number is below 80. There's 5 or 6 guys who won't be on the team come August. For various reasons, a lot of them are just going to finish school out and then move on, or sort of like what Jalen Huff did, where he was not on the team and then eventually went in the portal after they finished school or whatever. There's a little bit of that going on. So we've not seen the final sort of numbers, and I still think they're going to add several more players in the portal. Particularly I think right now they need some more defensive guys. I think they're down a little bit on their defensive numbers. We have them in well below 40, and that's not great. So need to figure that out, and then kind of, really, I think, find a productive corner. If you can find another linebacker that's productive, I think that would be big. And maybe 2 corners. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, they lost out on the kid, Chuckwez Robinson, who committed to Colorado. There's other cornerback. There's quite a few corners, actually. They're kind of floating around right now. So I'll be curious to see who visits in these coming weeks. And there's still going to be guys. Really, we have a full month, basically, for guys to make their decisions. The portal has no bearing on, once kids are in it, they can exit whenever they want. They can commit whenever they want. So really have up until August. And there could be kids that commit that don't show up until August or July or second session of summer or whatever. So there's a lot of flexibility in kind of how you take those people as well. Looking around, the rest of the football stuff, I feel like, I think we're getting ready to sort of see things heat up. Visits are getting ready to crank up again. And, there's going to be some movement. I wouldn't be shocked to see some movement just even on the commitment list with guys. Like, this is the time of year when that stuff happens. So, the summer months are when the bulk of the commitments come down, between basically June and August, end of August. So we're getting ready to hit the heat of the football season, and I'm excited for this part of it. I enjoy camp season. I enjoy going to watch 7-on-7 or prospect camps or whatever is going on in the summertime. I'm going to be all over again doing that stuff. This weekend I'll be in Dallas for the Rivals camp in Dallas, where the Saturday forecast, our camp's on Sunday, but the Saturday forecast is 98 degrees and thunderstorms, which sounds like a part of hell to me, but it is what it is. And then at the end of this month, I'm going on vacation for a full week. Like, I'm completely shutting down and not doing anything for a week. And Russell's prepared for basically Armageddon to go down while I'm on vacation, because that's very, 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 very likely. So that's sort of a preview of what's going on. We have a camp in Dallas this week, and then in 2 weeks in New Jersey, which will be like sort of our East Coast, like DMV kids and stuff. So there'll be a few Georgia Tech targets. There should be quite a few at the Dallas camp, assuming kids show up, because they're not afraid of 100 degrees and thunderstorms. And that's sort of where we're at right now. I will try to get into a video next week where we talk a little bit about post-spring and kind of where things are at. I'm kind of working with some story ideas that I'm going to have over the next week or two that'll kind of tie into that. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up for tonight. I appreciate everyone jumping on a Tuesday, right? Yeah, Tuesday night. And thanks so much. And Russell just said in the chat that Blue Canes announcing tomorrow at 3 p.m. And I do not expect it to be Georgia Tech, unfortunately. I would have enjoyed watching Blue Cane, but Damon Stoudamire found his own guys, and that's how it is. So, yeah, thanks, everybody. See you soon.